the feeling like I'm trapped in my damn mind. To the feeling like I'm rapping a damn lie. To the feeling like my life is a damn game.
Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a fantasy film, The Cobbler. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The film begins in 1903 on New York City's Lower East Side. A group of Hasidic Jewish men assembles in a cobbler's shop to discuss an issue affecting them. Jurgerman, a thief, has been robbing them of their enterprises and harassing the men and their families. The men present a pair of Jurgerman's shoes to Pinchas Simkin, the cobbler. Pinchas brings the shoes to his shop's basement, where he repairs them using a one-of-a-kind sewing machine. His young son Herschel comes, and Pinchas explains the machine's significance to him. The device is unique and must only be used at particular times. Max Simkin is currently employed as the shop's cobbler. Jimmy, who owns the barbershop next door, is his friend. Later that day, Carmen Herrera, a young woman, enters to inform Max that she is working with the Lower East Side community to prevent large-scale developers from demolishing portions of the neighborhood in order to create massive, complicated buildings. Max seemed to be unconcerned about the shop's fate. But Carmen tells him that his shop is essential for the city. She then asks him to be part of the rally. Max signs the paper, and they both part ways. Max lives at home with his mother Sarah, who is currently ill. The two of them wish they had one more chance to see Max's father. Her mother also mentions a woman Max dated before. Still, Max informs her she already got married 10 years ago and has 3 kids. But her mother does not seem to care. Her mother tells him the food for dinner is in the microwave. Max goes to get it, only to see her bag is in the microwave. One day, Leon Ludlow, a neighborhood hooligan, enters the shop and asks his shoes to be clean. Leon notices Max eyeing his watch. Leon tells him he has a collection at his home worth 3 times to Max's shop. Leon then asks Max to replace the soles on his shoes, and needs them done by tonight before he closes the shop. Max's sewing machine breaks down. He calls someone who can fix it, but they cannot be there tonight, only tomorrow. Max then went to the basement to find another sewing machine, which was the one his forefathers used. He then starts sewing Ludlow's shoes. Jimmy approaches Max and asks him what he is doing. Max informed him about his present sewing machine, and he had no other choice but to use the old sewing machine, which his father taught him how to use when he was little. Jimmy informs him how he used to tell Max's father to sell everything and make some money. Max closes the shop, but waits for Ludlow inside. Max checks Ludlow's shoe size out of curiosity, and discovers that he, like Max, wears a size 10.5. Max slips the shoes on, and to his amazement, Max transforms into Ludlow. He quickly took off the shoes, and went back to his standard form. Max wears them again, and examines himself in the mirror. He gets another pair of shoes and wears them, but it does not work. Max then uses the machine on them, recognizes its power, stitches more shoes, and examines himself in the mirror as different people. An Indian guy shows up at Jimmy's barbershop and smiles at him. Jimmy asks him if he wants a haircut. The guy refuses and says goodbye to Jimmy. The Indian turns out to be Max and amazes himself. He cannot believe he can communicate with other people by just wearing their shoes. Max makes use of his newly acquired power to step into other people's shoes and live like them. He spends the day in Chinatown dressed as a Chinese man. Max then enters a restaurant disguised as another man, and proceeds to depart without paying for his dinner. He sees a man on the streets with a really nice and expensive car. Max disguises himself as Ludlow, and forces the man to give him his shoes. At night he rode in his car and had a good time. Max asks his mother if she wants to be someone else. Her mother says no. He asks another question, and her mother answers she wants to have dinner with his father again. Max then looks for his father's shoes. The next day, a beautiful woman named Taryn brought a pair of shoes for her boyfriend. Max wears the shoes, and turns into a British man named Emiliano. Max goes to a pub dressed as Emiliano, and gets recognized by several attractive women. One woman approaches him, and informs him that she saw him departing with a man. But she thinks it is sexy. The two of them enter a taxi. The girl asks where they could go. Max suggests they could go to his house, but he should ask his mother first. The girl seems disappointed, and gets him out of the taxi. As Max walks on the streets, he is suddenly met with the real Emiliano. He transforms back to his standard form, as he has taken off the shoe on his left foot. Max then discovers Emiliano's residence and observes Taryn showering. She extends an invitation to him to join her. Max gleefully disrobes until he realizes that he will no longer be Emiliano if Max removes even one shoe. From that realization point, He departs from the apartment. Max sees Carmen on the television where her mother watches. In the morning, they see each other. They had a conversation, and Carmen suggested he should come by at her office. Later that day, Max wears the shoes of a young boy and stares at Carmen outside of her office. Max fixes his father's shoes and says hi to his father in the mirror. Max brings joy to his mother by wearing his father's shoes. Like Abraham, he shares dinner with Sarah and grants her one more night of happiness. Max discovers Sarah's demise the following day. He and his family spend a week sitting on Shiva. Jimmy talks to Max and offers to help out. Max questions why he would do that. Jimmy does not answer, but then advises him that everything will be better. When he returns to work, Ludlow wants his shoes. He pities Max that her mother did not leave him any money before she died. Max gets offended and asks Ludlow for the ticket. He will not give his shoes if he has no access. Ludlow got mad and threatened that he would be together with his mother in the afterlife if he will not give back his shoes by tomorrow. Max gathers various pairs of shoes, disguises himself to follow Ludlow back to his place, and then Max encounters Macy, Ludlow's girlfriend. The latter is abused by Ludlow and leaving the apartment. Max enters Ludlow's room in search of his watches and discovers a collection of firearms and other weapons. He grabs the taser and zaps himself, making him unconscious. A few hours later, Max wakes up and hurries to leave the house. The true Ludlow arrives when he opens the door and begins strangling Max until Max zaps him with a taser. Ludlow is now tied to a chair, and Max disguises himself as a young boy who poses to need money and just wants to take Ludlow's watches. Max leaves the room and comes back disguised as a big woman. Ludlow tells her where the watches are, and Max finds the watches. Max plans to tase Ludlow to make him sleep to give time for Max to escape. Unfortunately, someone knocking at the door. Max asks Ludlow who they are, and Ludlow tells him they got business and get $50,000 with his goons. Max has an idea and pretends to be Ludlow again, so he can get the money. Max is escorted by two goons who believe he is Ludlow to an area where they are imprisoning a man for stealing from them. They will execute him on Ludlow's orders until Max intervenes. Max goes to the bathroom and panics. When he returns, he asks the rat prick to tell him to get sorry. He then urges them to let him go. Later on, Max is transported to the residence of Elaine Greenewalt, a slum boss. She provides Max a substantial sum of money to evict a man from his apartment complex. Max returns to Ludlow's house wearing cross-dressing man's stilettos, but Ludlow is now free from the ropes. Ludlow continues to assault him until Max removes a shoe, shocking Ludlow upon seeing Max. He attempts another attack on Max until Max stabs Ludlow in the neck with the other stiletto heel. Max arrives at this home panicking. The next day, Max surrenders to the police, but when they return to the apartment, they discover Ludlow's body has been removed and the blood cleaned up. The police leave, thinking it was just a joke. When Max returns to the shop, he sees the stiletto heels and the blue bag placed on his table. Max is so confused. The money and the watches are inside the bag, and he then grabs a taxi to return what he stole. Jimmy approaches Max and closes the taxi door and confronts Max about his strange conduct recently. He informs Max that his father did the same thing before his disappearance. He concealed this information from Max to protect him. Max gets mad at Jimmy for not telling him and tells him to stay out of his business. Max enters Greenewalt's residence posing as the she-man named Marcia. He then returns the money, saying Ludlow sent him and said he cannot finish the job. Greenewalt is not okay with this and made her men knock Marcia out. Marcia wakes up and discovers she is in a car. She then slowly takes another pair of shoes from his bag and wears them. One of the men in the front notices a bad smell. When he turns his head to look over, Max has now turned into an old, dead but alive guy. The two men in front scream out of fear and then lead to a crash. Max steps out of the car and a bunch of kids asks him if he is okay. They then notice his face and screams as they run away. One boy trips and begs Max not to eat him, thinking he is a zombie. Max then takes off his other shoe and tells the kid he will not eat him, but the kid faints. The next day, Max covers the sewing machine and visits Jimmy's barber shop. He apologizes for what he did the other day. Jimmy offers him to shave him, but Max rejects it. Max accidentally pours a soda on paper. It reminded Max about the conversation the two men were talking about last night. He then rushes to see Carmen. Max joins Carmen in Mr. Solomon's residence, the man whom Greenewalt is attempting to buy out. Mr. Solomon is adamant about staying, having lived there for decades, and even raising his daughter there. Max devises a scheme to deceive Greenewalt into paying him a significant sum of money while retaining Solomon's home. When Greenewalt discovers she has been duped, she proceeds to the home of Solomon and threatens him with murder. She is later arrested after being caught on camera by a local television reporter. Max's life begins to return to normal. Carmen enters the shop and extends an invitation to supper, which Max accepts. He subsequently returns the watches to Macy at Ludlow's house, where he apologizes as Ludlow and tells her that she deserves better. Max is abducted as he leaves by a gang. The gang is commanded by the same man who stole from Ludlow's team. They are on their way out when their vehicle gets struck. Max regains consciousness in Jimmy's barber shop. Jimmy offers him water and a pickle, explaining that pickles help with the journey between bodies. Max inquires as to how he learned of this. Jimmy removes his shoes, revealing that he has been Abraham the entire time. Max embraces his father, both joyfully and angrily. Abraham takes him to the basement to show him his extensive collection of shoes amassed over the years. Abraham then drives Max to his limo and rides with him through the city, telling him the narrative of how their family came to own the stitching machine. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.